Before the 19th century, everyone believed that the universe was ruled by separate forces, such as gravity, electricity, and magnetism. But then, James Clerk Maxwell entered the historical scene and discovered that electricity and magnetism are actually the same force. In this video, we will derive Maxwell's equations and learn their true meanings. Good luck! The electric field can be thought of like the gravitational field in general relativity, which is the fabric of space-time. The electric field is also a fabric, a layer covering the whole universe. If a particle can disturb or distort this fabric, we call that particle a charged particle. Through dozens of experiments, we know extremely precisely how much a charged particle disturbs the fabric and how this change affects other materials. But what happens if this charged particle starts to move? When the particle is stationary, standing still, it only pulls or pushes the fabric. But when it moves, it begins to drag the fabric with it. This movement creates a different kind of disturbance. Not a straight line, but a swirl that circles around the path of the particle. We call this swirling effect the magnetic field. Now that we have learned the basics, we can move on to Maxwell's equations that predict the evolution of these fields. Firstly, we establish that a charged particle distorts the fabric of space. So, we should begin by finding out how a unit charged particle bends this fabric and what rules lie behind it. Before we define the bending, we must accept that the fabric itself is not passive, it resists being distorted. Think of the environment or the medium as the material of the fabric. If the fabric is stiff, like inside a material, it resists the bending, weakening the effect of the charge. If the fabric is flexible, like a vacuum, it bends easily. In physics, this resistance to bending is called permittivity, denoted by epsilon. Because the medium fights back against the distortion, the total field is reduced. Therefore, in our equations, we must always divide the charge by this resistance factor, epsilon. Imagine stationary charged particles bending the fabric, creating a well for negative charges. Yeah, a hill for positive charges. The intensity of this distortion depends on the number of charged particles inside. From this analogy, we can define the electric field as the slope created by this distortion. If we draw a boundary around this distortion, the total amount of slope passing through this surface area is equal to the number of charged particles trapped inside. In conclusion, the summation of the electric field over a closed area is equal to the enclosed charge. This is the integral form of Gauss's law for electricity. From this analogy, we can also define the derivative form of this law. Think again about the well created by the charged particles. The fabric bends more intensely as the number of charged particles increases. This bending creates a stretching from the center out to free space. To describe this mathematically, we use divergence. Unlike the gradient which finds the slope, divergence measures the rate of change of a vector field, specifically along the direction of its flow. It tells us if the flow is stretching out or piling up as it moves. The shape of the hole, how deep or sharp it is, depends on the density of the charged particles. This is exactly what we expect from general relativity. A high-density mass creates a black hole, but a low-density mass of the same weight does not. Similarly, a high charge density creates a strong source of field. Therefore, the divergence of the electrical field is equal to the charge density divided by epsilon in that area. Now that we've finished the first equation, let's move on to the second one, Gauss's law for the magnetic field. We have learned that the magnetic field is the swirling or twisting effect of moving charges on the fabric. Imagine the fabric is not being pushed up or down like a hill, but rather twisted sideways, like a vortex. If we place a Gauss sphere around this twist, we realize a fundamental difference from electricity. A twist has no starting point, no source, and no ending point, no sink. It simply loops back on itself. Therefore, unlike the electric hill that bursts out of the surface, magnetic lines simply circulate. Any line that enters the sphere must eventually turn around and leave it. There is no magnetic charge or monopole to act as a source. Consequently, both the surface integral and the divergence of a magnetic field are always zero. Simply put, those two equations calculate fields with straight displacement in space. Now, we should look at changes in the field with the view of curl in space. We have defined the magnetic field, B, as a twist or swirl on the fabric of space. Now, imagine holding this fabric and maintaining a constant twist. As long as the twist is steady, the fabric stays in a fixed shape. A particle placed nearby feels the twist but doesn't get pushed along the path. But what happens if we actively change the tightness of the twist? Imagine grabbing the fabric and twisting it tighter and tighter rapidly. The fabric reacts to this movement. The act of changing the twist stretches the fabric in a circular motion around the center. This stretching creates a temporary slope that runs around the twist, not towards the center. In our first equation, the slope, the electric field, came from a hill. Here, a new kind of slope is born from the movement of the fabric itself. This circular slope pushes charged particles around the loop. But we must add a negative sign to the equation. This represents the fabric's resistance. When you try to twist the fabric tries to snap back to its original state. It fights against your change. In mathematical terms, if we draw a circle that includes this changing twisting motion, the electric field along the circle depends on the rate of change. Because the electric field surrounds the magnetic field's twisting motion in a circle, we cannot use a straight displacement calculation. We must calculate how much the field curls around a point. In mathematics, this rotational measure is called curl. So the conclusion is, the curl of the electric field equals the negative rate of change of the magnetic field. From this point, we continue to the most crucial part, the insight that made Maxwell who he was. We have learned that the magnetic field is a swirl of the fabric, and this swirling is usually created by the movement of charged particles, which we call electric current. So, with this, we can derive the original Ampere's law. Electric current creates a swirl on the fabric. This swirling is perpendicular to the direction of the current. To find the total magnetic field, we must sum up all the tiny swirls along a closed loop. However, just like the fabric resists stretching, epsilon, it also reacts to twisting. The ease with which the fabric allows this magnetic twist is called permeability, denoted by mu. So, the current is multiplied by this constant mu naught. But Maxwell realized something was wrong with this equation. Let's look at the real world first. Imagine a simple circuit with a capacitor, two metal plates separated by empty space. When we turn on the battery, current flows through the wires. Ampere's law tells us this moving current creates a magnetic swirl around the wire. But there is a problem. Between the plates, there is no wire. No electrons can jump across this gap. The road is broken. According to the old math, since the current stops, the magnetic field should instantly vanish between the plates. But experiments show it doesn't. The magnetic field is there, alive and swirling, even in the empty vacuum. How is this possible without a current? Let's look at this with our fabric analogy. Current arrives at the first plate and starts piling up, creating a hill on the fabric. Now listen carefully. It is not the height of the hill that matters. It is the speed at which the hill is rising. Think about momentum. The current comes in with a certain motion. When it hits the dead end of the plate, this motion cannot simply vanish. Physics forbids it. So, where does the motion go? As the hill rises rapidly, it pulls and stretches the fabric in the gap. This stretching motion of the fabric itself becomes the carrier of the energy. In that case, the wire carries the motion as electron flow. The empty space carries the motion as fabric stretching, which is the changing electric field. The fabric transmits this stretching speed across the gap to the other plate, pushing the charges on the other side to continue the journey. With that, the motion doesn't disappear, and physics is happy because energy is conserved. So, the motion never stopped. It just changed form. Maxwell defined this stretching speed of the fabric as displacement current. Thanks to this, the chain of cause and effect is never broken. Now, let's leave the scene to math. As you remember, this displacement current is actually the changing electric field within the surface of our magnetic loop. In the end, the current created by the battery, the real current, and the current created by the changing electric field, the displacement current, together create the magnetic field. For the derivative form, just as a changing magnetic field curls the electric field, a flowing current and the changing electric field curl the magnetic field. With this, the electric field and magnetic field are unified. With this unification, we can finally understand electromagnetic waves. But we will learn the Maxwell perspective on electromagnetic waves in the next video. Quantum field theory also arrives at these equations in its own way. But for now, that is enough. One of the next videos will be about quantum electrodynamics field theory. So don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget, science is liberty.